welcome to Fossil Arcade. I'm Graham. Have you ever been heading somewhere on the bus, or going to work, shopping, and you just thought to yourself, oh, I want to punch something right now? Today I'm going to be talking about Street Fighter on Game Boy, which obviously allows you to do that if you're anywhere out and about. Although it might seem shallow to downgrade this arcade classic to a portable, not everybody lived near an arcade, and it's important to remember that games like this were the first point of exposure for a lot of young fans who've grown into hardcore players today. First, we have Street Fighter 2 for Game Boy. It goes without saying this is not a strong representation of the game. The frame rate of character animations is so low that fighting feels more like looking at a series of still images. Street Fighter is about anticipating your opponent's actions based on low, middle and high range attacks, and the weight of those attacks from light to medium to heavy. The choppy character movement stops you being able to properly judge what you and your opponent are doing, giving the CPU an obvious advantage. You'll be endlessly punished by the Game Boy's own limitations. While the arcade game uses 6 buttons, the Game Boy only has 2, making combos a bit of a gamble. The platform downgrade obviously created limitations, but despite Capcom's best efforts, it ends up feeling like cheap shovelware. It has its place for introducing a lot of kids to Street Fighter, but it's best remembered rather than revisited. I much prefer SNK's King of the Fighters 96, which was ported to Game Boy a couple of years later. The art style is more suited to a smaller screen, which makes actions quicker and combos easier to learn. I always choose Mr. Big, as I find him most relatable to myself. Moving on to Street Fighter Alpha for Game Boy Color, it's immediately obvious that SNK's simplified design has been emulated here. Character sprites are smaller and less detailed, but move more quickly and have more frames of animation. Despite the button limitations, the classic Street Fighter feel is here. Alpha set a good precedent that Street Fighter can work on a handheld even with limitations, so things were looking good when the Game Boy Advance turned up with 2 extra shoulder buttons. It wasn't long before Capcom ported Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. This time you can combine 2 simultaneous button presses to retain the functionality of 6 buttons from the arcade game, giving you the full range of attacks, albeit with slightly less ease. The GBA is known for its upmarket ports of Super Nintendo classics, but as a game in its own right, Turbo Revival is a solid experience. It does amalgamate character animations from other games, but that's not uncommon for Capcom, and it doesn't detract from the gameplay. I always choose Cammy, as I find her most relatable to myself. Perhaps I'll do a video on my Cammy cosplay sometime. In 2002, Capcom released the first portable version of Alpha 3, also for GBA. It's similar to Turbo Revival, but adds a lot more characters as well as Alpha's 3 gameplay isms: A-ism, X-ism and V-ism. Each of these modify your fighter in a number of ways and massively enhance the competitive play of the game. Damage and defense ratios change depending on which you choose, and matching the right character to each ism requires expert knowledge of the game. Alpha 3 is a much flashier title too, with a style typical of 90s Capcom arcade games. Sometimes the gaudy UI doesn't mesh well with the slick-looking character animations, but overall, the game feels more at home on GBA than Turbo Revival. That's about it for Street Fighter on Game Boy. Obviously you can find more modern Street Fighter games on PS Vita or Nintendo 3DS these days, but some of these still hold up and are worth playing for enthusiast collectors or people who are just curious about Street Fighter. If you're looking to pick up any of these now, I'd only really recommend the Game Boy Advance titles, as they are closer to what you would expect from Street Fighter. Turbo Revival is more suited to casual players who are looking for a quick fix on the go, whereas Alpha 3 is better for people who are into a competitive game and want to really take apart Street Fighter. You'd probably find these for around £5 to £15, depending on how complete they are. That's all for now, so thank you for watching. If you have any thoughts on Street Fighter for Game Boy, please let me know, and I will see you next time.